this is your host, Julia Napini. I am a clinical and forensic social worker who owns a counseling practice and a consulting business. In this show, we discuss the challenges of being successful in business while maintaining your integrity and staying true to yourself. Join me while I interview other professionals and share insights from life and experience. Let's talk about RingRx, our latest sponsor. RingRx is a high-quality, HIPAA-compliant telephone, text, and fax communications platform. They provide seamless, cost-effective communications for behavioral therapists, medical practices, hospitals, and other healthcare providers. RingRx is designed for modern healthcare environments. They offer customizable features like a phone app, automated patient outreach, voicemail, after-hours call routing, and top-quality desk phones. Try RingRx for free today at ringrx.com. And if you sign up using the code CLIMB, you'll get 15% off your monthly bill forever. Conditions apply. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Compassionate Climb podcast. This is a long-awaited interview. This is someone who I connected with a while back, have maintained connected to, have seen all the wonderful things that she's been doing, and have always wanted to have her on the show, and our schedules finally aligned. We have been on some parallel journeys, especially with our podcasting, and it's been so nice to see hers take off. Christy Pennison, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. And if you are listening, like really for me and Julia, we took we had an intention to do this probably about a year ago. So it just goes to show you that sometimes things just take time, and now we're here. So I'm super excited to be here and kind of talk a little bit about today, what we're going to talk about. Stay tuned. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so excited. Well, I think a lot of it makes me think of timing. And if we had talked back then, it would have been a very different conversation.
Yes. Isn't it funny how sometimes the timing of things, you're just like, oh, okay, so now here's where we're at, and this is what we're going to talk about.
So our focus today is going to be on collaboration, finding your people, maintaining longevity in this field, support. But before we do that, I want to hear about your career climb. So tell us what it is that you do, where you're from, and anything significant that got you to take that leap of faith into your own practice.
Yeah, I mean, it has been a crazy journey. As I'm sure if you reflect on yours, I mean, I just like look back and I'm like, oh my gosh, is this really the reality of what is right now? If I really take enough time to pause. But I live in Louisiana, in the middle of the boot, I call it, in Alexandria, Pineville area. And I started my, I guess, climb as far as into private practice and things like that about 5 years ago. But I own a multi-location therapy practice called Be Inspired Counseling and Consulting. We have 3 locations. I'm also very multi-passionate, of course, because that's not the only thing. I'm the host of Inspiring Possible podcast. And then I also have a business with a friend of mine who I met on this incredible journey called the Practice Collab. And we're going to talk a little bit about what that is in the Collaborship that we do in that, I guess, in that space. But you know what landed me here is a really interesting journey, because when I can think about maybe 15 years ago, or even further back than that, maybe about 20 years ago when I started college, okay, I thought that I would have never ended in the counseling profession. Like never, ever in a million years. I had a not great experience as a kid with a counselor that I just thought all the counselors were not good people. That's so crazy to think now, but like I just had this really not great mindset, or I guess association with counseling and counselors. And so, but I knew I wanted to help people. And so I actually went into college initially undecided. I just didn't know what I wanted to do. I thought I wanted to be a physical therapist. And then I realized that I really was terrible at biology, and, chemistry ate my lunch money. I never felt so like lost. And I took a sociology class, and I'm like, wow, this is so interesting how society affects behaviors, how this influences us in the ways that we act with different people and interact. And so I ended up getting a degree in sociology. But after I got that, I actually became a child forensic interviewer, where I interviewed children or teens that had allegations of abuse or neglect. And through that experience, I really felt a lot of, it was very rewarding. It was a very hard job, but I also felt like, man, I feel like I need to do more because I get them to tell their story. They've had this very traumatic thing typically happen to them. And then I have to kind of almost say like, good luck with dealing with that. And so I was a single mom at the time. My daughter was like maybe one. And I remember I was like, well, you know what? Maybe I want to do more. Maybe I do want to go into counseling. Maybe my perception was wrong from my childhood. Maybe there was something there, as we learn about ourselves. And I'm like, maybe I want to explore this further. And so I actually went into school to be a school counselor because I thought, okay, this would be great as a single mom. I can have my daughter schedule similar, and then I can work with kids, which is my passion. But it's funny because I've never really made it into a school. In fact, I did maybe work for an alternative school for a very brief period of time, but you know, I never made it. So I went through probably for the next maybe 6 to 8 years after I got my degree in counseling, to the licensure process and to working in every different kind of spaces from like home and community based settings to um, doing different types of administrative work to working in an alternative school very briefly. And I got to a point in one of my roles. I'd actually even worked my way up in an organization to a regional director position, and I loved it. But the problem is that there was some organizational shifts and changes where then the values of the organization shifted, and then I was like, "Ugh, this is not feeling good to me. This has taken over my life. I'm becoming very unsettled, unhappy. I was not a very positive person." And that actually pushed me out into saying, like, I just need to do something different. I'm burnt out. I'm stressed out. I'm overwhelmed. I just can't continue to do this. And so I took a leap out of that and I actually went and worked at a private practice, which when I started counseling, I was like, this is not, everybody else in the class was like, my goal is to get to private practice. And my goal was like, no, I just want to help the people. I don't ever see myself doing that. I didn't think I could do it because I was a single mom. And I'm like, I need a salary with benefits. And I remember that benefits thing was a big thing for me to just leap out to go work for somebody else that did not have benefits. And I became a contract employee. So what happened, Julia, is one day after I was like a year into my burnout recovery is what I call it, where I was working, at a private practice and very part-time. I don't know how I survived that year, but we made it through. And I came home to my hometown. I lived about an hour and a half away. And I'm like, you know what? There's really a gap in mental health services in here. And I told myself I'd never move back, never move back. And then I said, okay, I just couldn't sleep one night. And I said, I think I'm supposed to move back. And I think I'm supposed to start this counseling practice. And so it started just me by myself in this room. And then that's where actually is going to tie into our conversation today, which is about collaborship, because I was so lonely. And I also felt I was about to climb the walls because I realized about month 3 of just trying to do a private practice, never did this before, that I'd never worked by myself before.
Well, you're
And
Enneagram 7, aren't you?
yes, I'm a
Yeah. So
7.
you're all about the fun
Yes.
and the
And I'm like,
friends.
this is like I am in a room. There's nobody really calling because, you know, if y'all listening and you're working on about to do a private practice or you're in private practice, I mean, unless you're like just coming with a ready-made clientele or something like that, like it takes a minute for people to know who you are. And for me, I had been 5 years out of not living in my community. So the names that I had built for myself prior to had faded a lot. So I had to reestablish trust. I had to get people to know me. I had to get people to know what I was doing. And so I was like, I need somebody or something or some people. And I found a podcast. I listened to it and I joined, it was with Practice of the Practice. And I joined one of their cohorts to like learn with people. And I showed up as often as I could. I tried to make friends. That's another thing about the 7. I was trying to make friends. Because I just was like, I do not want to do this by myself. And so over the past 5 years, what I've learned as this practice has just transformed and grown through, in front of my eyes. Um, if that collaborship and having community while you are doing this is vital for not only sustainability. I'm going to get this word out, but sanity. Okay. So that's a little bit about my story, Julia.
Well, that was a very nice summation, and I did not know a lot of the twists and turns that your journey took. So I appreciate you sharing that. But once you joined that group, tell us how it took off from there, and what has collaboration done for you in your own practice?
Yeah, so it's interesting because I can remember one of the things that this group did was they assigned you to accountability partner. Okay. So this was this internet stranger that you were going to be grouped with. And then you were supposed to tell this person, like where you're at. And that's when I had to tell them, like, I had a few clients and nobody was calling. I was living off of savings and a prayer. Okay. I sold my house, moved back with my rescue animals, my daughter, and was just like, had a few months of like, to cover expenses. And I was just hoping this was going to work. Okay. So I had to tell them, like, it wasn't working exactly like I thought it was going to be because there was crickets. Ain't nobody was calling. And so I remember it was actually Jen Morley. I don't know if you've ever met her, Julia. So Jen was my accountability partner. And what was crazy is we started just saying, hey, we're both trying to figure this out. She had been doing it a little bit longer than me, but we're going to commit to creating some goals and figuring this out together and then sharing resources. And then after her, I started meeting other people, which I met Steph Corporal, who is now my practice bestie, who is also, and Jen's a practice bestie too, but like that we're the people that have done the Practice Collab. And so I just started making more friendships. I started getting in more intentional meetings where I'm just like, I'm just going to meet. I'm going to figure out, I'm going to share what I've learned, the good, the bad, the ugly. I'm going to try to help them if they need something. And hopefully, if I have an issue, that they can also be reciprocal. And so what I found was over the past few years that you just started to intentionally, it's kind of like a relationship, Julia. It's carving out that intentional time to say, I want to have a give relationship, which means that I want to support you in your success, but I also really need somebody to hold me and be in my corner. Because group practice ownership, especially if you've gotten to the group part, it can be very lonely because you're transitioning into a leadership role. You can't necessarily be like, hey, everybody, let's sit down and make a job description together. Or, hey, folks, let's decide what your compensation structure should be. Like those are ideas that you can't really do with people. You need other people that can kind of help you brainstorm what the best possible option would be for you. And then every practice is so different. So it's really beneficial to not only have those people that are helping you make decisions that are also in the pursuit of the same thing with you, but they intimately start to know your business.
Right.
So they know, hey, Christy has this many employees and this is her structure and this is the reason why. And oh my gosh, this was that big thing that she had to go through that was really hard for her because this person, so you start to learn all these details. And then, so then you have a sense of like, okay, even if things are not going right today in the world of business or me trying to do this thing and try to figure out how to do it well and be a great boss and be supportive of my team members, like there's other people that I can like vent to or I can consult with or I can collaborate with to be able to find solutions versus staying stuck in that overwhelm or stress. And I don't know about you, Julia, but this came from a place of burnout and I do not want to go back there again.
Mm-hmm.
So they also hold you accountable to what are the things that you actually said that you wanted to do and how can I support you in getting there?
So you touched upon some of this, but I'd love to highlight the first thing that comes to mind for me is the potential for competition. So not so much in the therapy space because these are people that I'm assuming are in different areas than you are. So that's not so much of an issue and actually kind of that safety net where you can help each other grow your businesses at a distance. But when you enter the consulting space, how do you make sure that you are doing it differently, unique, authentically, set yourself apart, and not allow competition or imposter syndrome or all that you're seeing out there with what everybody else is doing impact the work you're doing?
Julia, I'm so glad you talked about this because this is a real thing, folks. Okay. I don't know if y'all been on social media or you ever get on social media or you're trying to do something cool and then you get on social media and you're like, oh, well, look at that person. And I mean, so you can start to get in a sometimes you can get in a headspace that you need to check out of. Okay. So I think one of the things to answer your question that you have to really work on to do is also work on your mindset
Mm-hmm.
and really try to come from I try to remind myself abundance mentality, like abundance mentality. Because like honestly, even if somebody next door to me that's having a counseling practice was like, Christy, I really want to be able to figure this out and learn from you. Like I'm willing to be able to help because I realize that we could all be doing something And there's still not enough people to go around to serve the people that we all want to serve. And we all serve differently and have different needs. So, like, I can think about there was this one time, this is way off from maybe what you asked, but there was a counseling practice. I remember we had just gotten our new location. And there was counseling practice that my landlord had called me up and she's like, hey, there's another counseling practice that wants to move in the parking lot. And I want to know, because I always try not to put two businesses of the similar business together,
Right.
will you be okay with this person moving? And at first I was like, hmm. But I'm like, you know what? No, I'm not switching. I got to get away from the scarcity mindset. I got to get to more of that collaboration, abundance mindset. And I said, you know what? If somebody wants to move in there, that's perfectly fine. It's not a problem. And you know what has happened is actually they've been a collaborator where they take insurances that we don't take, or we provide services that they may not provide. So it becomes more of a collaborative effort. And not that we're like talking on the phone every day. I don't want to like paint a picture that, we're sitting in a room together every day, but there has been a sharing of things. And I can think like we had an intern that then got employment where we couldn't offer it. So, there's really some opportunities that could be whenever you're in that collaborative mindset. But I can't remember what was the main question. Julia, this is the real life of a practice owner that, like, I know I was having a point here.
You were just getting in flow there. But in all reality, it sounds like you might have had some of that inclination where there might be some competition. You're seeing what someone else is doing. You have that moment of pause when they're moving in and you're thinking, ooh, how's this going to work for me? Then you see how it plays out and everybody does it different. That's the key piece.
Yeah, and I think you'd asked the question that reminds me about, like, well, how do you stay in that space to not getting more in a collaborative mind space versus a competition? I think you really do have to also know what your values are. Like, what are the values? Like, so even like for the Practice Collab, I'll think that as an example. Like, not only does my practice have values, but the Practice Collab has values, right? And so making sure your business has these clear core values, and then also being able to identify what does make us unique, what is different from what we offer versus somebody else. And just also reminding yourself, like, this is what helps me, Julia. Every time I get in an airplane, I look down and I'm like, whew, that is a lot of people. It's a lot of people. So there are a lot of people to help. And so I think also, how can you also support other people who are helping other people, right? Like through this journey, because we're all different. It's just like a therapist, right? Like if you're picking a therapist to go to, every therapist is so different. Their approach is different. The way that they do things, their training is different.
Sure.
But part of what we want to encourage clients to do is find somebody that they connect with, that they feel safe with, that's a good fit for them. And so it's also realizing, just like whether it be in your therapy practice or whether it be through something else that you're doing, how to make sure to stay in that collaborative mindset is that to remember that although I would like to be for everybody, I'm not for everybody. I'm for certain people and I cannot help everybody. That's the reason why me and you have group practices, right? Like I could only see so many people a week. But if I wanted to expand my reach, then part of the way I do that is through collaborating, whether it be our team collaborating and them coming on board and saying, yes, I want to be able to be a part of this organization. We're collaborating together. So I think collaboration for me is just at the heart. It's been something that has been transformative for me, but I think also we have to have the mindset to say, and we have to, when that competition mindset wants to, creep in, we have to be aware of it and then be able to say, like, no, that's not what I'm about, because it'll still come, right? Like it'll still come, but you have to kind of talk to yourself, just like we help our clients learn how to move through those thoughts.
I love it. So if we start with the Practice Collab, for those that do not know what that is all about, how did that come to be? What is it that you offer? And then we can kind of segue into your newest venture.
Yeah. So, as I was trying to figure this whole thing out about, like, how do we, make this vision of Be Inspired Counseling Consulting a reality, and for it to not, like, for it to actually live, for the dream to live, right? It was trying to figure out people that I could collaborate with. And actually the way that the Practice Collab came about was because me and Steph Corporal, who is, well, like I said, practice bestie, she had asked me, we were about a year in, or we had just started our group practice. We had one employee that we each hired. I think we were contractors at the time. I think she was employee and I was hiring contractor. And we're like, oh my gosh, we don't even have an employee manual. and we're about to have somebody that's joining our team. We haven't thought about this, or we haven't done this. And I remember she, in one of our meetings that was virtual, not just me and her, it was like a group. She messages me on the side and she's like, "Hey, I'm thinking about going to Nashville for a weekend to get some stuff done. Would you be interested in going?" And this is how little we did not know each other, Julia. She picked me up. I said yes, because I'm a 7. Okay. I'm like, "Oh, yeah, that sounds like fun. Let me just make sure my schedule's good and we'll go." And she picked me up and she was still messaging me on Facebook Messenger because we hadn't changed phone numbers. Okay. And it was super awkward. I'm not going to lie. When we first got there, we're like, "So tell me your story. Who are you?" I can remember. And so what happened was is we started doing these co-working, collaborating weekends like every several months, where we'd go somewhere, we'd co-work together, we'd invite other people in slowly as we did them. And then we're like, "Hey, this really helps us move the needle on projects that we don't have the energy to do otherwise, or don't have the time to do otherwise, because we're carving out this space.
Right.
We have real time person that's sitting there to bounce ideas back off of, to get insights from." And then we just said, "Hey, you know what? If this has worked really well for us, I think that this is something that other people need, because they may feel lonely, or they may feel like, I really just need to I feel overwhelmed. I just need people that get it. I need to be in a space where people can help me move through this. And I can utilize that energy of co-working also to like get these things like an employee manual." I'm just going to use that as an example. That is a very daunting task for many people, done because they're sharing their resources. I'm not having to start from scratch. We're looking at each other's stuff and we're creating together. And so that's how the Practice Collab came to be. And one of the things we're really excited that we just announced today, which we were talking about the timing of this, is we announced that we're finally launching the Collaborship, which is kind of like it's not a membership. That's what we joked about. Like, it's not a membership, but it is a cohort that you join. And it's going to be people that are we try to intentionally fit people in the same cohort that are around the same stage of practice for group practice owners. And it is really that intentional time that we're going to be carving out for people to either work on big ideas, work on daily tasks, but also get that ability to collaborate with other people who will know your business, who will get it through 6 months. So that way that you can really move the needle on some of these things that you really want to have done, and have that supportive environment to be able to collaborate with other people as well.
Sounds so exciting. As someone who has experienced the benefits of coming together, same place, in person, you really come there with a clear focus on what you want to work on. You're inspired by the people around you. You have a shared experience together, and then you can maintain that. And then it sounds like this is just going to take it to a whole another level. So how do you fit it all in?
How do I fit it all in? Is that the question? Well, that's a good question. Well, I'll be honest with you. This is what happens when collaborship, I'm not saying that life doesn't get busy, right? But what happens is the more you collaborate, the more you get these ideas of, how do I delegate better? How do I, get other people to help me in these different areas? And so then it actually frees up your time. And I'm sure you've experienced this too, Julia, to do things that, like, "Oh, this is fun. I love hanging out with other group practice owners who get it." It doesn't mean that we don't have struggles that we need to vent about or process about because something really hard happened. But like, I genuinely enjoy being with these cool therapists because, I mean, honestly, most group practice owners are therapists themselves, right? I mean, maybe not everybody, but most. And so they're natural helpers. They want to be able to give. They have great ideas, and they really have a core value of, like, I just want to create impact in my community or wherever I'm serving. And so then you get to just hang out with them, and then you get ideas and you get to get cool things done, and then you have a little fun. And so it's actually re-energizing. And then you learn, okay, what do I need to delegate next? What do I need to do to free up my time more so that I can do different things or go to these creative pursuits? Whether it's like Julia, like last year, you started a podcast, right? Or hey, you wanted to dive more into consulting. And so that's something that you've done. So it's just that opportunity to also work on other things besides just your practice that you may be passionate about getting out into the world.
Something that's been on my mind a lot, and I would be very interested in how you've handled this, is as you start to explore more beyond your group practice, how have your clinicians been with that? Have you gotten any feedback? Do you ever get concerned about maybe not being as available or accessible? Do you feel like you have what you need in place for them to have a go-to when you're unavailable? How have you navigated that part?
Yeah, so I mean, and let me be clear too. Like when we're talking about all this stuff that may be going on, like that I do right now, this was not my reality a few years ago. This wasn't even my reality a year ago. In fact, I even do PLPC supervision, Julia, okay, for because I'm a counselor on the counselor track, but I'm finally letting go of that this year because my people, like in the next few weeks, the last one is about to get their full license. And so there's different ebbs and flows that you have, and there's different times where you have more opportunity to do things. But I do think it comes down to how do you build a team that you can have not only support the business, but they also understand that if you can do these creative things, then maybe it also gives them other opportunities. So one of the things that I've been really fortunate about, to be honest, is that there has been individuals that are now team leads that are responsible for developing and nurturing the individuals on our team. And then my goal is to develop and nurture them, right? To help get back to them. So it's kind of like a trickle down effect where you put structures in place to have people carry some of I don't want to say the weight of what you do, but carry some of the things that you do, the responsibilities you have that can also really, and I know me and you've talked about this, but they align with your values.
Mm-hmm.
So their values are similar than yours, and they see the vision. They see the vision of where it's going, and they also acknowledge what your strengths are and then what their strengths are. I can think this year my leadership team sat down and we kind of did this exercise. We were like really trying to identify what each person's superpower was. And just us being able to reflect on our own, but then also have everybody share what they thought that person's superpower
Oh, I love
was really
that.
cool because it was very spot on. So they also recognize that like Christy is the visionary. So she needs time to do these creative things and as she's doing creative things, then it's ultimately going to hopefully provide other opportunities too for us to be able to do different things if we want to. So I think fortunately, as time has went on, I've had a team that has helped support some of that vision casting, and then also been supportive of the realization that like, hey, just like we're all multi-passionate, they have other passions. Some of them are really good bakers, or some of them do things on the side where they volunteer in their community. It's like, how do we nurture those passions? But I think it's also helping your team members realize like, hey, what are your professional goals? Like, so we in our team every 6 months are evaluating what are their goals as it aligns for the business.
Mm-hmm.
And then also what are their goals personally? Do they want to like do something different with health and fitness? Do they want to start a garden? Do they want to start a hobby? Like, what are some things that they would want to do? So that also gives them permission to say, like, if you want to be able to do something else or do something more creative or do something that lights you up, we want to support you in doing that.
Yeah. I'm so happy to hear that. I think that's definitely the message that we want to send. And it can get challenging, but it sounds like the team that you have formed is really supportive, and you doing all of the things that bring you joy is just giving them permission to do the same. And you're also letting them know this enables me to support you in that. And we're here to help you in whatever way we can. So it's
Yeah.
beautiful.
And also, I think acknowledging them, like I tell them all the time, I'm like, I get to do, there are some things that I'm able to do because y'all are so awesome that you are, I don't want to say like and I'm not saying that it's not always easy. I don't want to paint this picture that like there's not challenges or you have to work through different things that you see, but because that is the reality, folks. I don't want to make this seem like it's all butterflies and rainbows and we're skipping, my whole team is holding hands and we sing Kumbaya and we skip down the road. Okay. That doesn't always happen. But I do think the more that, I also allow them to support me, it also builds that trust. Like, because I don't know about you, Julia, but sometimes I do try to take on more than I should, you know, and I do try to say, okay, yeah, I got to do that. But I'm really over the years, as I've built more people on the team, they've even had to remind me, like, no, we can do this. You can do that over there. Like we can take care of this. You don't have to worry about that. So it's also getting them to take that, I guess, ownership in the vision of where we want to go, and also being able to be like, no, this is a two-way path of a reciprocal relationship,
Right.
and we want to help just as much as you want to help us.
Well, this interview has definitely been worth the wait. So share with everyone how they can learn more if they're interested in this new offering that you have and if they want to follow you or potentially work with you.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can go over to the practicecollab.com. So it's COLLAB, short for Collaborship, which is where we got that from. And you can actually go on our website, and there's a place where you can click and just kind of find out more about this collaboration opportunity that we're having. It's actually going to be starting in the middle of June. So there's still some time for people to get in and at least apply, because that's what we're trying to ask people to do. And really, the application is more to just to make sure that we put you in a cohort that is best for you. Because one of the things that I found too is that also being with people that are in the similar stage of journey is really helpful versus like somebody might be here and somebody might be over here. Although it's awesome to learn with people from different stages of practice. I think that's really important. So like I know you do consulting and you're at a different stage of practice, right, than somebody else that might be starting out. So I think there's a lot of value to getting consulting. But I think really the heart of Collaborship is trying to find people that are at similar stages that can be able to give to each other as they're walking down the path. So just go to practicecollab.com and you can find out more there. And then if you have any questions, you can definitely email at heyfriend@thepracticecollab.com.
I love it. That's awesome. Well, I will include that and obviously all of the links for you and your businesses. And I really appreciate you being on the show. All that you shared today, all that you're doing, and how generous you are with sharing that with others.
Yeah, well, Julia, thank you so much for having me. And I'm so glad that we got to do this.
You and me both. And I think we're going to meet in person for the first time.
Yes,
Coming right up.
woohoo! In a few weeks. I don't know if anybody else listening is coming, but we're gonna be in Kentucky. Meet you in Kentucky with Casey Compton, and y'all come find me or Julia. Say hi, because we're gonna
We
be the
love to
people on
make
the
friends,
side
and
having
so
the
do
fun.
I.
Yeah.
Awesome. See you there. If you like what you're hearing, please rate and review. This will help others find us and benefit as well. The Compassionate Climb podcast represents the opinions of Julia Napini and her guests. The information provided is intended for educational purposes only and should not be taken as legal advice. If that is what you are seeking, please consult an attorney.